When I was little, I know we spoke Estonian at home. I didn't think about it because, that's what we spoke. We had to talk with our parents. But I know when I was small, and I didn't even understand that my parents had accents. My father had more of a, let's say, an accent than my mother did. I didn't hear that. I was kind of tone deaf because it's just the way my parents spoke. But I remember my friends, when I was growing up, they were asking me, so that strange language, you know, how do you count to 10? So I would teach my friends, how to count to 10. Well, I must have known, that much Estonian, at least to be able to teach my friends a little Estonian. My parents grew up in Estonia. They were teenagers, both of them, when they left. They didn't know each other beforehand. My mother grew up in Tallinn. My father grew up in Pärnu. So they were basically, my parents were both in high school when the war came. My mother, who prided herself in being a good student, her parents demanded that of her, that even during the Soviet year of occupation, she was a good student, so she received some kind of a young Soviet award for that. And she said, well, she was kind of proud of it because she was a good student. She wasn't proud that it was a Soviet award, but that was the way that the life was at the time. My father, in 1943, was going to be conscripted by the German army, drafted by the German army. He was 18 years old then. And all 18-year-olds at the time in Estonia, young men, were being conscripted by the German army. My father chose another route. He went into hiding. He went to a place in the forest near Haapsalu, and then escaped, I think, along the northern Estonia coast to Finland, where about 5,000 or 6,000 young Estonian men had gone to sign up, volunteer for to fight in the Finnish army. The real heavy Soviet onslaught didn't start until the summer of '44, June or July. But in April, it was sort of the end of winter, beginning of spring. Things were kind of quiet. It was a weekend, I believe, because my father said that they lived in these barracks in bunks, and my father was a bunkmate of this guy who got leave to go to Helsinki for the weekend, or to get out of the camp. And so my father always had what was in the top bunk, but he got to borrow his bunkmate's bed, which is the lower bunk, because it was a little nicer there. The guy had a warmer blanket that was really a nicer pillow, whatever. He mentioned the blanket, so he was on this lower bunk. And what happened that night was that there was within the barracks that either they were some mines or explosives that they had acquired, or for some strange reason that they had stored in one of the buildings in the barracks. For some reason, I think the barracks caught on fire, and some of the mines eventually exploded. But in the meantime, while this is going on, the fire, the guys in the barracks had caught wind of that, and they had gone out to see if they can put out the fire. While a lot of them were rushing towards the fire, the whole building exploded. There were 33 guys who died. My father, in one of the issues of this journal I'd mentioned, he wrote his remembrances. It was just about 2 or 3 pages. But I just recently reread them again, and he kind of writes about, because he had taken these from notes that he had written in April 1944, about his feelings of that day and that night. Well, first of all, he had been very happy because he was in this warm bunk at night. Also, consequently, because it was so warm and so comfortable, when all this hubbub was going on and guys were running out to put out the fire, my father was like, I think I'll just stay here and sort of enjoy this nice night of sleep. So he sort of missed that, and the explosion. But when the thing exploded, it was terrific. This whole building was destroyed. The barrack that he was in suffered a lot. There was a heavy piece of shrapnel, I guess, that had come through the roof and landed exactly in his bunk above him. So he was also fortunate that he was in the lower bunk, that he wasn't injured, being in the upper bunk where he usually is. And then just sort of the scene when they went out and they just you know, everything was just destroyed. There were dead bodies lying everywhere. He said even, you know, the next day, days later, they would be walking out into the woods. You know, horrible scene. You can imagine that there are pieces of bodies that they were finding all over the place. You know, it was war. It wasn't, you know, a battle or anything like that. But that was really his most horrific wartime experience. This explosion at Yalkala that claimed so many lives. And I think even when you compare the you know, the later Soviet onslaught and all the casualties that happened there, nothing really could compare to this, and all the you know, the Estonian casualties and the men who died that night or that early morning. So that sort of you know, really gave him his, you know, his most horrible and brutal taste of war. My father, he was the only one who left. So his family was still all back in Estonia. So whenever he went back, he had the family, he had his old friends and his buddies, some of them who were in the you know, who had served in the war, either on one side or the other or the third side. So he always looked forward to going back. My mother almost wanted nothing to do with Estonia. Her family had been ripped out. Most of her relatives had left. Her favorite uncle disappeared in 1940, 41. It was hard for my father to talk about leaving his family. I suppose it really first hit me when his father, my grandfather, died. His name was August Altau, and he died in 1968. I was 8 years old, but I remember my father just closing the door of his bedroom, and he cried for like a whole day or 2 days. It was just, I mean, I'd never heard my father cry. Well, I don't know if they even spoke on the telephone, and I don't know when after the war, how long it took for my father to communicate with his family and for his family to find out that he was still alive and he was living in the West. In 1980, for the first time, my father was able to go back to Estonia. So if I'm doing the math, he left in 43, 53, 63, 73, 37 years it was before he was able to come back to Estonia. He went with my mom and my younger brother. They sort of had a real eye-opening experience. I mean, especially for my brother. My brother was there for the first time, and then it finally, you know, hit him full force that, okay, so this is the story. This is what we've heard all our lives. He was, let's see, so he was 17 years old, and then. And I remember that he even wrote about it. He visited and talked to groups about, you know, being back in Estonia, you know, the discrepancies, you know, Soviet life, and all these strange paradoxes of, you know, things aren't what they seem. You know, what is supposed to be this is actually that. Black is white, white is black. And then he was trying to explain to Americans, you know, what that was like. In 1972, there was this significant Estonian event. It was the first Estonian World Festival, which later became known as ESTOs. So the first such festival took place in Toronto. My family, my mom and dad and brother, took the trip up to Toronto to take part in that. And I was still kind of young to understand, but I remember standing at I guess it was the City Hall in Toronto, and I still have the poster that said "Freedom for Estonia," and I was standing there, I guess, with this poster. So that was maybe my first political activity overtly. I always say I'm a lobbyist basically now. I work for the Baltic American communities, including the Estonian community, and I always say that from the time I was old enough to speak, I was a lobbyist because I was always explaining to people, you know, what Estonia is, you know, where it is, why it is, what it is. And that's what I'm doing now. I go to Congress and I tell people, you know, what Estonia is, where it is, what it is, how it is. That hasn't changed. I just get paid for it now.